Hello and welcome to the very first episode of From A to Zinc. This podcast is all about bringing clarity to the supplement industry, diving deep into the science with the world's leading experts and separating fact from fiction. Whether you're new to supplements or looking for real, science-backed insights, this is the place to get the clarity you need to make informed, effective, and safe decisions when it comes to supplements. And what a better way to start this podcast than with one of the most respected names in nutrition science today. Dr. Christopher Gardner is the Director of Nutrition Studies at Stanford Prevention Research Center and a Professor of Medicine at Stanford University, where he's been shaping our understanding of how diet affects health for decades. His research has been at the forefront of the field, and you might have seen his experiment featured in the Netflix documentary You Are What You Eat, The Twin Experiment. He's the perfect person to help us kick off this first episode, breaking down the ABCs of supplements, what they are, what matters, and what we all should know about them. Welcome, Dr. Christopher Gardner. So let's dive in. With hundreds of thousands of supplements available today and thousands more coming to the market each year, it can quickly become overwhelming. The list of things you feel you should be taking seems endless if you're striving for optimal health, beauty, or peak performance. So I ask you, have we lost sight of the bigger picture? When it comes to nutrition and supplementation, what is the actual goal? Why do we even need supplements? And how did we get to a place where they've become so widely used?
Well, so if you go way, way back, the term vitamins, actually, that's an American abbreviation or form of it. So it's vita for life. You need these for life. And instead of amines, it was amines. And amines means there's a nitrogen group on there. So from an organic chemistry point of view, it's something that has nitrogen in it that you need for life. So we have proteins, carbs, and fats, which all give you calories. And we have minerals, which are all just elements, right? Minerals are the elements in the periodic table, but the vitamins are structures of molecules, carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, nitrogens. And there's broad classes of what all the vitamins do. Quite a few of them are coenzymes. And so what an enzyme is, let's start with an enzyme. Quite a few of the enzymes are molecules that make reactions go faster. It's called catalyzing reactions. And when you need something turned off in your body, it's important for some of these reactions to go fast. And so when you need them, they become activated by things like these coenzymes. Your body makes the enzyme, which is capable of making this reaction go faster. And the folic acid or the B3 or B2 or B1, they will actually attach to the enzyme and make it active. And when they pop back off, it's inactive. So a lot of stuff, Charlene, in metabolism is it can't be running all the time. It has to be running sometimes when you need it. And so you need enough of the vitamins around that when that part of metabolism needs to be either kicked up or kicked down, they are there to help. There's another class of vitamins that actually act a little more like hormones, and that would be vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin D. Those are three of the fat-soluble vitamins. They actually will go into your DNA and turn on or off the production of some of these proteins. Some might be enzymes, some might be other things. Vitamin C, for example, is an antioxidant. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. That prevents oxidative degradation in your body. So if you go across the whole family of fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins, in fact, when I teach this to undergraduates, it takes me 4 separate classes. I teach vitamins and minerals separate, and for the vitamins, there are the fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, and I just mentioned most of those. The A, D, and the K act like hormones. Then there are the water-soluble vitamins, which are vitamin C, the antioxidant, and all the B vitamins. Unlike the others, there's B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And some of those are missing. Like not all the numbers are there. And the nomenclature is a little weird because we pretty much say thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, and that's B1, B2, and B3. There is a name for B6, which helps us switch our amino acids around. Those are the proteins in our body. And it's also called pyridoxal phosphate. Nobody says that. They say B6. And B12 is cobalamin. Nobody says cobalamin. They say B12. So all the B vitamins have numbers and names. People use the names for some and the numbers for some. If your listeners are confused, they should be. Over like 50 or 100 years, there's a ridiculous amount of work going on to name them with letters of the alphabet. And B's are the only ones that have all those numbers. And not all the numbers are there because sometimes two people in two different countries were working on the same thing and they didn't realize it. And they named them different things. And then they had to say, oh, never mind, it's the same thing. Skip that number. We're already past that. We're on to the next one. But the key to all the vitamins and minerals is they're such small amounts that we need them. When we have proteins, carbs, and fats, we need grams and grams of these. And when it comes to vitamins and minerals, we either need milligrams, which is 1,000th of a gram, or micrograms, which is 1,000th of a milligram. So B12 is one of my favorites because this is the one that for people who are following a plant restrictive diet, vegan, only eating plants, technically you can't get any B12 from plant foods, which is a little confusing. So of all the vitamins or minerals, the single one that we need the least of is B12. It's 3 micrograms per day. You couldn't even possibly see 3 micrograms. It's not visible. And it's a huge molecule. It's got all kinds of atoms in it. It's a big structure. It's really unique because it doesn't get absorbed in the upper small intestine where most of your nutrients get absorbed. It has to go almost all the way to your colon before you absorb it. And you can't absorb it unless it's hooked to something called intrinsic factor that came out of your stomach. There's some older adults who don't make intrinsic factor. And if it's not hooked and you can't absorb it, you need shots of B12. You can't just take more and more in a supplement and make enough to get it. You actually have to inject it to get enough. And it's really important for the myelin sheathing on your nerves, this particular one. And so it's important for neurological health long term. But it's amazing how little of it you need. And we're super efficient at recycling it. And it takes years, sometimes decades, if somebody wasn't getting enough for the damage to manifest itself to be noticeable. There's a quicker thing that you can see. You get a type of anemia from this before the neurological development. So you probably would see this coming ahead of time. But it is part of the fascinating family of vitamins for me. And when they say vegans can't get any, you have to have animal food. This part's really fun for me too. So animals actually don't make B12 either. Bacteria make B12, and animals eat dirty food that has bacteria on it. And so when they're eating food off the ground and they're eating this bacteria, it's not very much, they're concentrating some of that in the flesh or even the milk that they make that we consume. And that's how we get it. So when people say, oh my God, as a vegan, you can't get any B12. Well, yes, you can. You could actually eat some dirty carrots where you didn't peel the skin off the carrot. Like if you peel your potatoes and peel your carrots and peel everything else, you won't get any. Lots of foods these days are fortified with B12. It's such a small amount. It's really easy to get. You could take a B vitamin supplement, which would have B12 in it, and it would be a very microscopic amount. You could have nutritional yeast. So it is one of these vitamins where the pros and cons and the sources from a nutrition and metabolism perspective are fascinating.
So basically you said that there are, if you talk about vitamins, there are water-soluble and fat-soluble. And the fat-soluble ones, they can be stored in the fat tissue or in the liver. Water-soluble ones, they cannot be stored, so therefore you do need to consume them more regularly. Do you think this directly translates into using them, taking them as supplements?
Yes. So if you were to look at the position of the American Dietetics Association, they have a position statement that says you shouldn't need vitamin supplements. You should be able to get all your nutrients from food because that's how we evolved. But the truth is there's a lot of people that live in a food desert or a food swamp that don't have access to reasonably healthy food or a reasonable variety of food. There are also people who have finicky times in life. If you're a little kid, I mean, a lot of parents give their kids supplements because they're really not eating great variety as little kids. There's adolescents these days who eat horribly. I can think of lots of situations where people don't have a reasonable access to a reasonable variety of food. So a multivitamin, multimineral is a safety buffer, whatever you want to call it. My concern is always that somebody thinks, wow, I can eat horrible food and just take a supplement and I'll be fine because I'll get all my vitamins and minerals that way. So one thing to emphasize for your listeners is please don't use it to replace healthy meals. If you're going to take those, they can help. And like you just said, the water-soluble B vitamins and C, you need pretty regular because they wash right out of you. The other nice thing about water-soluble vitamins is they can't really be toxic because you don't store them in excess. If you did happen to get more than you need, you would just eliminate it in your urine at the end of the day. But yeah, you need those much more regularly. And there's quite a few people who don't have access to healthy food.
So does that also directly mean that the fat-soluble vitamins, if you took them as a supplement, they're something you should not be taking daily?
Here's another interesting point. So we always say in the field of nutrition that the fat-soluble vitamins could accumulate to the point where they're toxic. There's very few documented cases of it happening. I can think of one paper where for a while vitamin E was very popular 20 or 25 years ago with cardiologists. Vitamin E is an antioxidant, and the recommended daily allowance, I'm going to get this wrong, it's something like, and there's different units for it too. I think it's like 10 international units a day. And the supplements being given were 400 and 800 international units a day. And people were taking them daily. And after multiple randomized controlled trials, like the gold science approach to figuring out cause and effect, they all failed. They didn't help. And in fact, at one point, somebody said, well, I'm going to look now at all the trials where they failed and pool them together. And they actually had a small harmful effect. And that's why for many of these vitamins and minerals, Charlene, it would be important to look on the label because it'll typically say what percentage of the RDA there is.
And for anyone who doesn't know, RDA stands for recommended dietary allowance. It's the average daily intake level of a nutrient that's considered sufficient to meet the needs of most healthy people.
So an important thing to keep in mind is in the US, more is better. Not necessarily the case. So if you were to see something that says has 100% of the RDA, that would be a reasonable bet. That means if you got none from your food that day, you'd be getting it all from this pill. There's some pills that say this has 500% of the RDA. Why would you do that? Are you not eating any food today? And even if you didn't eat any food today, 100% would be okay, and 500% would be more than enough, and you can't do anything with the extra. So it's a really easy trick on the supplements. Stick as close to 100 as you can, going back to B12 just for a moment. It's such a small amount. I'm not sure if I've ever seen 100% of B12. It's such a small amount. I think to add it, they end up adding 500% anyway. Most of the others, you could get 100% of the RDA and you'd be fine.
Yeah, I agree. It really can be overwhelming as a consumer. We are constantly made to feel that we always need to take one more. And like you said, more is better. That mindset is everywhere. But on one hand, it is important to make sure we're getting the daily nutrients our bodies need to function properly. But beyond that, there's not really an added benefit most of the time. It's about keeping the body in balance rather than pushing it into excess, I feel. So let's move on and define what we actually mean by supplements. Rather than looking at their marketed purposes like for energy, for focus, or for muscle gain, we can break down supplements in 6 major categories. Let's talk about the first one, vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, so those are essential. Those have been over the last 100 years, actually, not for the last 50, but the 50 before that, that's really how nutrition got started. Finding out that other than just calories, if you are deficient in certain minerals or vitamins, a lot of them act as coenzymes that help a lot of the metabolism take place in our body. There was an acute onset of scurvy or goiter or pellagra or anemia, lots of things like that. Most of those have actually been resolved. If you want to think of the things that remain, anemia is quite common. In different parts of the world, you'll see goiter, which is a deficiency of iodine. Scurvy, no one's seen for a long time. Pellagra, which is a deficiency of niacin, hasn't been seen for a really long time. And so most of the vitamin and mineral issues are addressed. You could take a multivitamin multi-mineral for that.
Great. Let's move on to the second category of supplements, the proteins.
I have a lot of protein rants online. I don't know why people are so obsessed with protein these days. I firmly believe that most people get enough protein and need to stop obsessing about it. But for people who are interested in muscle building, for example, there's branched chain amino acids, there's leucine supplements. Technically, if you get enough food and you are working out really hard, you end up eating more food because you were working out really hard. So if you wanted to build muscle, I feel like some people take these protein supplements unnecessarily because they're getting the extra calories, which comes with the extra protein that they're eating. So really working out, the main way to build muscle is to work out, not to eat protein. Let me just give you a quote from Stu Phillips, who's an exercise specialist, who told me in all his work over decades, what he's found is building muscle is more than 90% the workout and less than 10% the protein. It's a factor, but it is not an important factor. If you just want to maintain muscle, probably everybody's fine. If you want to build muscle, you have to work out really hard regularly.
Wow, and that is really interesting to hear because it is so contradictory to a lot of the messaging we hear in the mainstream media, whether it's about that abs are made in the kitchen or also that, we need to consume more and more protein. And by eating more protein, that's going to do the work for us. But it is really interesting and important to hear that building muscle is actually more about the effort in the gym rather than what we are eating. The third category is fats and fatty acids.
Sure. And in that category, so this is very particular to me, so I'm going to take this very personally. So I stopped eating animal foods and fish more than 40 years ago. So I haven't had any. And I don't take a supplement. I'm pretty healthy. There isn't a recommended allowance for it. One interesting thing about supplements of fish oil, in particular, the omega-3s, is how big they are. In the cardiovascular world, a lot of trials have been done with fish oil. And to be honest, most of them have failed to show a difference. And these are randomized control trials with tens of thousands of people to see who lives or dies. Virtually all of them have failed to show a benefit. One thing they really do is they lower triglycerides. They're really good at lowering blood triglycerides. But when you see the amount that you have to take, so start with, in a fish, not all the fat is omega-3, just a very small amount. And so some of these are fish oil supplements, and some of them are fish oil supplements concentrated in EPA and DHA. Even when you do that, if you're trying to get a gram or 2 grams or 3 grams, which isn't really a whole lot, I've seen some of these recommendations be to take 12 fish oil tablets a day. And they're not tiny. They're big, oily, encapsulated tablets. So fish oil omega-3 is really interesting on the one hand. There's not a lot of evidence for long-term benefits on cardiovascular disease. There's plenty of evidence for short-term lowering triglycerides, which you think would have a clinical benefit, but it's been very hard to show it. And they're just big honking pills to take. I think from an adherence perspective, it's hard to get people to take a lot of those. I'm not a fan of fish oil tablets, and I don't eat fish, but I actually think eating fish is very healthy. And if anybody's up for eating fish, especially instead of steak, instead of junk food, by all means, eat fish. Fish oil supplements, I'm not so sure.
Okay. And then we also still have the herbal and botanical extracts. Like you said, there it's a bit unregulated. We have all these ashwagandhas, turmeric. Do you have a take on herbal supplements?
So I've done studies with garlic, ginkgo biloba, and it's not an herbal, but soy phytoestrogens. All of my studies have failed. And because I've done studies in those areas, I always sort of perk up when I see it in the news and I look at the design and I look to see what happened. And most of what I see is not a positive benefit. And there's always the question of, was the dose sufficient? What was the source of it? Here, the real challenge is the lack of regulation. There might be a great company that sources it naturally and has the right dose and sort of drowned out by all the others who make a different garlic, a different ginseng, a different ginkgo. There is a company in the US called consumerlab.com where you can actually write in, and you have to pay a subscription to find this out. And the interesting thing is they'll only tell you if the supplement you're interested in actually has what it says it has. Doesn't that seem like a very low bar? I'm not finding out if it works or not. It says it has this, and you're only going to confirm that it has what it says it has. There was actually some legislation in the US in 2007 where they said, we've made a big breakthrough. We're really going to clamp down on supplements and make sure they have what they say they have. And my reaction was, that's the big breakthrough? Shouldn't the big breakthrough be the claims that they make are valid? That really is just a tough area because there are so many potential uses. And running nutrition trials to prove effect and efficacy is really much more expensive than people think. And if somebody has a new product and you're thinking, wow, you guys are coming to market with this new product, before you do, you sure better run some randomized trials to see if that claim is accurate. It's really not possible. So you could be very skeptical on the one hand and say, there's no evidence for benefit. And then on the other hand, if that was your field of work or study, you would come to appreciate quickly how challenging that would be to come up with evidence.
And then we also have as fifth category probiotics, prebiotics, and enzymes, which are live microorganisms or compounds that support digestion or gut health. And then sixth category, we have the specialized bioactive compounds, which are non-essential but can be beneficial compounds with physiological effects. For example, collagen, CoQ10, melatonin, or L-theanine. Now let's talk about the real life. A lot of people do struggle to eat a perfectly balanced diet, and that can be due to many factors, whether it's a demanding job, frequent travel, family responsibilities, or simply a busy lifestyle. It can be difficult to plan meals and prepare balanced meals for many. So as a result, many turn to supplements as a sort of safety net, especially with so many quick fixes and solutions promising to fulfill those nutritional gaps. So do you think, can supplements ever fully replace real food in terms of providing nutrients, or is something always missing?
Oh, something's always missing. So one of the challenging things in food is we don't know so many of the chemicals that are coming in food. And because evolutionarily people got a variety of food for so long, to be missing something for 10 or 20 or 30, 40 years is something that's really hard to keep track of. So the experiment would be a horrific experiment to see if you could just feed the essential vitamins and minerals and see if you lived or died. That would be pretty unethical to try to do that. There's almost a natural experiment of that right now. So there is, it came out of the San Francisco area near where I live, this product called Soylent, where they said we put all the essential vitamins and minerals in here. It's actually, just to poke fun at them, has to do with the techie people in the San Francisco area working for all the big tech companies, Google, Apple, Amazon, whatever. A lot of the coders who really, absolutely workaholics, just coding like crazy, making lots of money, thinking, I don't have time to stop to eat. I'm in the zone. I got to keep doing this. And they have this Soylent that they have for a meal. You can't chop it. You can't cook it. You can't braise it. You can't season it. It's just Soylent. I guess you can season it because they probably have vanilla and chocolate and different flavors. It's just the essential nutrients. I think this is a horribly scary, dangerous experiment that these people are bypassing food and just saying, I'm all set. The thing that I'm drinking, milkshake-like type thing or Ensure in a hospital, has all the nutrients that I need. These are all the ones that have a recommended dietary allowance, when in fact, there's a whole world of things that we tend to call phytochemicals, plant chemicals, that are all the herbals and botanicals and the other things. I'd be really afraid if people started trying to get it all from supplements. It should only be, shouldn't replace a healthy diet. You should always eat a healthy diet. And if you want to hedge your bets, add some supplements on top of that, but don't allow it to replace healthy foods.
Now, there are so many different diets out there, even some that are quite extreme and completely contradict each other, whether it's keto, vegan, high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat. There are so many, and it can really be confusing to know which one is actually the healthiest and where we might be missing out on important nutrients because we're cutting out specific food groups, right? And you've conducted some of the most well-known nutrition studies directly comparing different diet patterns and their effects on health. For example, you compared low carb versus low fat or omnivore versus plant-based. Across your studies, did you come across any notable trends at the micronutrient level? So, were there any deficiencies, surpluses, or interesting differences in vitamin or mineral intake depending on a specific diet?
So in my studies, just to make this clear, a lot of my studies, I ask people to change their diet for 4 weeks, 6 months, or a year. I don't think I've ever asked anybody to change it for more than a year. And most of those have been at the level of trying to change weight or cholesterol or blood pressure or inflammation. And a lot of the vitamin and mineral deficiencies, we usually get enough in our food, even if the diet is quite varied, to not see an immediate problem. So let me give you a very specific example. So we actually just ran a really fun study that ended up on Netflix, and it was called You Are What You Eat. And it involved 22 pairs of identical twins, either staying omnivorous or going vegan for just 8 weeks. And in that amount of time, some people worried that the vegans wouldn't get enough iron and would become anemic. Well, it was quite interesting, actually. And since we saw this, we've looked into other papers. Vegans often get a higher iron intake than meat eaters, which sounds weird because it seems like there's a lot of iron in meat. And there is. So we could document in the course of the study how much people were eating, but the important part wasn't how much they're eating, it's how much they're absorbing. And it's easier to absorb iron from meat. And so the true health condition here is whether you become anemic or not. And 8 weeks isn't enough to see this. So when you ask sort of what, studying all these different patterns, what might we have seen with vitamins and minerals? Boy, that one's a hard one to see. You have to go long enough to make new red blood cells, to add the iron into it, to know if it was absorbed or not. And none of my studies have I ever seen any of the participants become anemic during the study. And I think that's good. Most of them get enough from food. And a problem in our study, Charlene, is if we have 50 or 100 people, it is possible that 1 or 2 or 3 this would happen to, but that it ends up not being statistically significant because most people were fine. So if I were to study that kind of thing, I would have to very specifically design the study.
Right. So that's really interesting to hear. So basically, none of the diets you compared showed a complete deficiency or were nutritionally dangerous on their own.
No, and so we've done lots of diets, as you suggested. The 2 most restrictive are vegan and ketogenic. I mean, we often publish dietary results and say, wow, when you were vegan, you were getting less B12, but I didn't see any harm. Wow, when you were keto, we saw less vitamin C and less folate, but we didn't see any harm because it wasn't long enough. So we do tend in those studies to document which of the nutrients on a very restrictive diet might have been limiting, for which a supplement might have helped. But since they weren't long enough to see the manifestation of these nutrient deficiencies arise, it was no problem. I think we might have done a couple studies now and then where at least we often tell people try to not to be on extra drugs or be on extra vitamins or supplements. Pretty often if somebody's on a multivitamin, multimineral, we say that's fine. You're not excluded. That's going to cover your bases. Please just take one that's 100% of everything and not 500 or 1,000% of everything. So hard to see in our studies, but we do always try to document it. And quite often in the discussion, we'll say, and we can't address the possibility that if this were continued for years, something might have occurred because it is lower than the recommended daily allowance.
But so you are also saying that even this was not enough time to basically develop a severe deficiency. And that's very contradictory to a lot of consumer behavior. People kind of fluctuate and consume vitamins so sporadically. I would like to continue with a quick fire round so you can just respond honestly, whatever comes to your mind. And I'm curious to see what you have to say. So what's one supplement you would never take?
Oh, some of these kava kava or the different fen-phens, the things that speed up your metabolism for the purpose of losing weight. So those were done, and they really did speed up your metabolism when you weren't working out. That had horrible health consequences for people.
Oh, wow. So if you had to recommend just one supplement that you think most people could benefit from, what would it be? And of course, just to be clear, this isn't meant as a personal medical advice, and we always encourage people to consult a healthcare professional before making any decision. But hypothetically, if you were to recommend one supplement, what would it be?
Yeah, actually, it would be a multivitamin, multimineral that has 100% of the RDA of everything. Then if you're going to take that on a regular basis, you're covered. If you had a bad week or a bad month, they're all there. It'd be very hard to isolate one because different people have different needs.
And what's one supplement-related myth that drives you crazy?
Oh, can I do a couple?
Of course.
So one of the things that makes me laugh these days is there was a lot of interest in the phytoestrogens that are in soy, to the point where people were promoting soy food. Then they were promoting phytoestrogen tablets. And then there was a huge backlash and said, oh my God, those phytoestrogens are giving men man boobs. They're growing breasts because they're getting, okay, that part is not true at all. The vitamin D thing, I don't know how much of a myth it is, but I do follow the literature really closely. There's a lot of vitamin D trials that haven't shown benefit. And that one, Charlene, is a really important one to me because there are very few food sources of vitamin D. So there's some seafood, and maybe you can get some from mushrooms, but historically, that particular vitamin for most people comes from sunlight exposure, hitting the skin, transforming cholesterol in the cell membrane into vitamin D that your body uses. And we do need vitamin D, but most of us get it from even a very modest amount of sun. And if we didn't, if we were inside playing video games all day, if every time we went outside we had an umbrella because we didn't want the sun to get on our skin, which is true of some Asian cultures, and it's true of some older people. There's lots of reasons people are avoiding the sun. There's a potential need for it. And so I've seen all kinds of vitamin D studies on diabetes and multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases, and most of them have failed.
I have noticed this, and I've seen data on it too, that the majority of people who buy supplements actually don't do any testing before to know what their deficiencies are. So it's basically more of a self-diagnosis or a feeling that you like the marketing, the packaging, or the person behind a certain supplement, and that is why you buy it. So it's not really a measured approach. And I do think that in the US, there seems to be a growing trend towards a more data-driven, personalized approach, with a lot of tests becoming a lot more accessible to many people. But in general, we can say that today, a lot of people still buy supplements without having tested their deficiencies beforehand. So isn't that just the problem? Don't you think that people should just be testing more to make better informed decisions?
So it's a great point, except for not all the vitamins have an easy test to detect being deficient. So can we pick two in particular? One would be iron. So iron is actually amazingly efficient at seeing who's deficient. So there actually is a separate clinical measure for how much stored iron you have, how much iron is being transported and en route to being used in your red blood cells, and a functional level called the hemoglobin, that is the iron in your blood. So there's a storage, a transport, and a functional level. You can measure them all. So if somebody's hemoglobin level is fine, but their storage is completely gone, they're at risk. And we know that right away. Flip over now to calcium. So if you were to check your calcium level in your blood, it would never show it was low until your bones were about to break. So the problem is we have such an incredible storage of calcium in our bones, and it's necessary for lots of things in our blood, that whenever the blood level's low, it just borrows a little from the bone, and it borrows a little more, and it borrows a little more, and our bones are so strong and they're such a great source of calcium, you wouldn't notice for years and years and years that you were borrowing it. But if you just went to get your blood tested, it wouldn't tell you anything. So what would be really helpful is to have a list. Iron, yes, very good testing. Calcium, no, useless. So you'd have to go through all the vitamins and minerals to see which of those tests could accurately tell you if you were deficient or not. And there's no one hard rule. You'd really have to go through them one by one.
Wow. I have one last question to wrap it up. If you could give people one advice when it comes to supplements, whether it's about choosing them, using them, or avoiding mistakes, what would it be?
So while you're choosing them, you should also take advantage of some places. So I don't get any money from this, but there is a company called consumerlab.com. And what that lab does is it has an ongoing running basis for knowing if the product has what it says it has. So there's actually quite a few, especially if you want to get into botanicals or other things. But let's just go with vitamins and minerals. If the label says it has this much of this many vitamins and this much of this many minerals, Consumer Lab will tell you if that's true or not. And there's another thing on the label in the US anyway called USP. Some of the supplements have a USP validation on it to show that it has been tested and this really is what's in it. I do find that there's so many supplements out there that sometimes they don't actually have in them what they say. And so if you want to help yourself, you should take that extra step to see if it's a credible supplement company that has this USP certification, sort of see if you can go into the background and see how they produce their products. Is this all synthetic? A lot of these companies do better by, here's where I source them. We actually have our own agricultural fields. We extract those vitamins and supplements from our own farms. There's definitely better quality and lower quality supplements. So I definitely, if this is something you're going to take on a daily basis, do your homework, find out a reputable place. And I know it will take some time, but once you've taken the time, you can stop. That's it. Use that one.
That's a great tip for our listeners. Thank you so much for that. And where can they hear more about you, your work, keep up to date with you? Maybe you can share social, anything.
I'm kind of on Twitter. I haven't been doing it that much lately, at Gardner PhD. And I'm on Instagram at cgardner PhD. And we have a website. And this is, for some reason, this isn't the actual official website, but if you typed in nutrition.stanford.edu, it would take you to the right place because that was sort of our initial name. And then now it says something about med school and something else, but nutrition.stanford.edu is our website, which has lots of YouTubes and all of our study results and all the press releases we get. So that would be a fun place to go to check us out.
Super.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you so much. No, absolutely. Thank you so much.